The restaurant was full. Laughter. Clinking glasses. The smell of roasted garlic and wine filled the air, and then the manager's voice sliced through the noise like a blade. "You're fired! Right here! Right now!" Every fork stopped mid-air. The young waitress froze, her hands trembling around a tray of empty glasses. A glass slipped, shattered across the marble floor. "Look at that!" the manager barked. "Can't even hold a tray properly. How did someone like you even get this job?" The waitress tried to speak, her voice shaking. "Please, ma'am." "It was an accident." "Accident?" the manager scoffed. "You've been a walking disaster since day one. You think this is some charity? Pack your things and get out." Guests watched in stunned silence as the girl's eyes filled with tears. Her voice broke. "In front of everyone?" The manager crossed her arms. "Maybe public embarrassment will finally teach you a lesson." The waitress turned to leave, humiliated, heartbroken, when the door creaked open. Polished shoes stepped in. A deep, calm voice cut through the tension. "Is this how we treat our staff now?" The CEO had just walked in. What happened next? No one in that restaurant will ever forget. Before we continue, from which country are you watching? This story? Comment below. And if you love emotional, real-life stories with powerful lessons, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring videos every week. Just hours before this moment, the same young waitress, Ava Johnson, had walked into La Maison d'Or with tired eyes but a hopeful heart. Her shift was long, 12 hours on her feet, but she never complained. She needed the job. It wasn't just about paying rent. It was about keeping a promise to her late mother, to save enough for nursing school. Every morning, Ava tied her apron carefully, brushed her uniform spotless, and whispered, "One more day, Mama. Just one more day closer." But working under Clara, the restaurant's manager, was never easy. Clara was sharp-tongued, proud of her authority, and quick to judge. She had a smile for the wealthy customers, but venom for the staff beneath her, and Ava, being quiet and kind, was her easiest target. "Faster, Ava. Do you want people to think we hire sloths?" "Smile, girl. You're serving elite guests, not running a soup kitchen." Words like daggers. But Ava took them all silently. Her co-workers liked her. They'd often whisper, "You don't deserve this, Ava." But she'd always smile softly and reply, "It's fine. I just need the job." That evening was different. Rumor had it that someone important was coming. Maybe even the CEO himself. Clara had turned the restaurant into a war zone of perfection. Every napkin folded, every candle aligned, and every staff member terrified. The guests began arriving in elegant suits and glittering dresses. Ava moved from table to table, polite, graceful, her nerves hidden behind her gentle smile. Then it happened, a small accident that would change everything. A wealthy guest, slightly drunk, waved his hand mid-conversation and knocked over his own glass of red wine. It spilled across the table, and somehow he blamed Ava. "Are you blind?" he shouted. Before Ava could explain, Clara was already there. "What did you do now?" she hissed. I didn't touch it, ma'am. Clara didn't let her finish. "Enough, I've had it with your excuses." The customer smirked, enjoying the scene. Ava bent down to clean, her hands shaking, tears threatening to fall. Then, the tray slipped, glass shattered. That sound was all Clara needed. Her voice echoed across the restaurant. "You're fired. Right here, right now." Everyone turned. Couples stopped eating. Even the pianist froze mid-song, and there stood Ava, small, fragile, trembling, while Clara unleashed her frustration like a storm. "You're a disgrace to this place. Do you think anyone wants to be served by someone who can't even stand straight? Look at you." "Pathetic," Ava whispered, barely audible. "Please, ma'am. Not in front of everyone." But Clara's smirk only deepened. Oh, everyone needs to see this. Let this be a lesson. We don't tolerate incompetence here. Ava turned to leave, her world collapsing, and that's when it happened. The door opened, the air shifted, the sound of polished shoes echoed on the marble floor. A man in a dark navy suit walked in, calm, tall, confident. The staff froze. Clara's face drained of color. It was Daniel Grant, the CEO himself. His voice was steady, controlled, but sharp enough to silence the entire room. Is this how we treat our staff now? The room went still. Clara swallowed hard. Ava looked up, her tear-streaked face meeting his calm, unreadable expression, and from that moment everything was about to change. The entire restaurant froze, not a single breath, not a single whisper. Clara's confident smirk vanished, replaced by a pale stiffness that made her look almost fragile. Her hands twitched nervously as she turned to face him. "Mr. Grant," she stammered, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "What a surprise. We weren't expecting you tonight." Daniel Grant, tall, composed, with eyes that carried the calm weight of command, scanned the room slowly. His gaze lingered on the broken glass, then on Ava, standing in tears beside it. Finally, his eyes fixed on Clara. "I can see that," he said evenly. "Care to explain what's happening here?" Clara straightened, regaining her voice. "It's nothing serious, sir. Just a disciplinary issue. The waitress was being careless. Again. She's been warned several times." Daniel's voice remained calm, but his tone had a quiet authority that made everyone listen. "Warned several times?" He looked back at Ava. "Is that true?" Ava hesitated, her throat tightening. I've always tried to do my best, sir," she said, softly. "But tonight, a guest spilled his drink and—" Clara cut her off sharply. "You're lying, Ava. I saw it myself. She wasn't paying attention." The CEO's eyes hardened. "Clara," he said, his voice dropping slightly, quiet but dangerous. "I wasn't speaking to you." The words hit like thunder. The staff, behind the counter, froze. Some glanced at each other, struggling to hide their satisfaction. Ava swallowed, looking at the CEO nervously. "I didn't mean to cause trouble, sir. I just wanted to clean it up. But the tray slipped from my hands." Daniel nodded slowly. "Did you shout at her in front of everyone?" he asked Clara without looking away from Ava. Clara's face reddened. Well, yes, but only because this isn't the first mistake she's made. Our image matters, sir. Guests were watching and I had to maintain professionalism." A bitter silence filled the room. Even the guests seemed frozen in place, unsure if they should keep watching or pretend they weren't. Daniel turned to face her now, his expression unreadable. "Professionalism," he repeated softly. "You think humiliating your staff in front of customers is professionalism?" Clara's mouth opened, then closed again. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Do you remember what this restaurant stands for, Clara?" Her silence was answer enough. Daniel exhaled slowly, his voice calm but cutting. "This company wasn't built on fear or pride. It was built on respect. From the kitchen to the front door, every person here matters." A few waiters lowered their eyes, visibly emotional. Ava stood completely still, her hands clasped together, tears drying on her cheeks. Daniel finally turned to her. "Ava, what's your full name?" She blinked, surprised. "Ava Johnson, sir." "All right, Miss Johnson." He nodded once. "You can take a moment to breathe. You're not going anywhere." The words hung in the air, soft but powerful. Clara's jaw tightened. "Sir, with all due respect, this kind of leniency?" Daniel raised a hand. She fell silent immediately. "Enough. I've heard enough excuses for one night." He looked around the restaurant, meeting the eyes of the stunned guests. Let's continue dinner, everyone. I apologize for the scene you just witnessed. Then his gaze returned to Clara. We'll discuss this properly in my office tomorrow. For now, step aside and let the staff handle their work. Clara hesitated, then reluctantly moved back, her pride collapsing under the weight of his authority. Ava stood motionless, still unsure what to say. Daniel gave her a small nod, a silent reassurance. "Clean up the floor," he said gently. "Then take a short break. You've earned it." And as Ava knelt to pick up the broken glass, the restaurant buzz slowly returned. But not with laughter this time. It was whispers. Whispers about what they had just witnessed, a power shift no one had seen coming. Behind the counter, a young waiter murmured quietly, "Finally." Someone stood up for her. Ava heard it. For the first time that night, a faint smile appeared on her tired face. The breaking point had passed, but the real change was just beginning. The air in the restaurant felt heavy, like every breath carried the weight of judgment. Even the flickering candles on the tables seemed still, their flames frozen mid-dance. Daniel Grant stood silently for a moment, letting the quiet stretch. It wasn't anger that made the room tense. It was his calm, the kind of calm that demanded respect. He finally spoke, his tone firm but controlled. "Let's make something clear," he said, turning toward the staff. "No one in my company is ever to be humiliated in public, no matter the reason." Clara's lips pressed tightly together. She looked like she wanted to speak but didn't dare. Daniel's gaze moved toward the table where the incident had started, the one with the wealthy man in the gray suit, the one who had spilled the wine. "Sir," Daniel addressed him politely, "I was told there was an issue with your service." The man shifted uncomfortably, realizing everyone was watching him. "Oh, no, it's fine now," he muttered, trying to look away. Daniel tilted, his head slightly. "Are you sure? Because I believe my employee just lost her dignity trying to make you comfortable." A few guests glanced at each other. The man in gray turned red, mumbling, "She didn't do anything wrong. I may have knocked the glass myself." A wave of whispers rippled through the restaurant. Clara's face turned white. Daniel looked back at her. "So, the accident wasn't her fault after all?" Clara's voice cracked. "Sir, I didn't know that." He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "That's the problem, Clara. You didn't know, and yet you shouted. You embarrassed her, in front of everyone. Tell me, is that how leadership works here now?" The words hit her like cold rain. She looked down, unable to meet his eyes. Ava stood quietly by the counter, still shaken. She had never seen anyone, not once, stand up for her like that. Daniel turned to her, softening his tone. "Ava, did anyone ever tell you to report mistreatment?" She hesitated. "Yes, sir. But I didn't want to cause trouble. I thought maybe I deserved it." Daniel's eyes darkened slightly, not with anger, but with sadness. No one deserves to be disrespected for doing their job. He looked around at the staff, his voice rising slightly. "Every single person here, from the dishwasher to the head chef, plays a role in what makes this place special. Without them, we're nothing but an empty building with fancy lights." A small round of applause started, quietly at first, from the kitchen door. Then another waiter joined. Then another. Clara stood frozen, humiliated now not by rage, but by truth. Daniel finally turned back to her. "Tomorrow morning I want you in my office. We'll discuss your position, and whether you still have one." Her voice trembled. "Yeah, sir." He nodded once, then turned to Ava. "You've had a rough night. Take a short break. And when you're ready, come back. You still have a job here." Ava blinked in disbelief. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Thank you, sir." Daniel offered a brief smile. Don't thank me. Just promise me you'll never let anyone make you feel small again." As he walked away toward his reserved table, the entire restaurant seemed to breathe again. Guests resumed talking, but not about their meals. They whispered about the moment they'd just witnessed, when power met humility, and the truth finally spoke louder than fear. The room buzzed softly as Daniel Grant took a slow breath, letting his eyes sweep across the restaurant. He could feel the tension, the guilt, the silence, the unspoken relief among the staff. For a brief moment, no one dared to move. He turned back toward Clara, who stood rigid near the counter, her hands clasped tightly, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Clara," he said quietly, "you've been here for what, 6 years?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. In 6 years, you've helped shape this restaurant's reputation. But tonight, in 5 minutes, you almost destroyed it." Her lips parted, but he continued before she could speak. "Do you know what people remember most when they visit a place like this?" he asked, looking around the room. "Not the food, not the decor. They remember how they were treated. They remember how they saw others being treated?" The guests were silent, listening. Even the chefs had stepped out of the kitchen now, peeking through the doorway. Daniel walked to the center of the floor, his voice calm but commanding. "Every great business," he said, "is built on respect. When that is lost, even for, a second, everything else crumbles." He turned toward Ava, who stood near the back, unsure whether she should still be there. "Miss Johnson," he said gently, "please come here." Ava hesitated, glancing around nervously. The staff gave her small nods of encouragement. Slowly, she stepped forward. Daniel's tone softened. "I heard what happened, and I want to say this. You did nothing wrong tonight." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ava's eyes widened, her lips trembling. "You handled yourself with grace," he continued, "even when someone tried to strip you of your dignity." He looked at Clara again. "That takes more strength than most people will ever have." Clara's shoulders sank. The power she once carried seemed to dissolve under the weight of truth. Daniel paused, then said clearly, so every person in the restaurant could hear, "Effective immediately, Ava Johnson is reinstated as a full employee of La Maison d'Or, and Clara—" He turned to face her. "You're suspended. Pending review." A hush fell across the room, followed by a slow, growing applause. It started from the kitchen, then spread through the tables, guests, staff, even the pianist clapping softly. Ava stood frozen, tears glistening in her eyes. For the first time in a long while, they weren't tears of humiliation. They were tears of relief. Daniel smiled faintly and added, "Let this be a reminder. Respect isn't a reward. It's a responsibility." He looked around the room one last time. "And anyone who forgets that doesn't belong in my company." Clara turned away, her eyes wet, realizing how far pride had taken her from humanity. As the applause continued, Daniel leaned closer to Ava and said quietly, "Sometimes the right people are watching when you think no one is." Ava nodded, her voice breaking. "Thank you, sir, for believing me." He smiled. "No, Ava. Thank yourself for never giving up." And in that moment, the power had truly shifted, not through anger, but through justice. Weeks had passed since that unforgettable night, the night when truth silenced arrogance and dignity found its voice again. The restaurant had returned to its usual rhythm, yet something in the air had changed. The staff worked with renewed respect, the laughter of customers felt warmer, and even the aroma of freshly baked bread seemed sweeter. And at the heart of it all was Ava Johnson. She now wore her uniform with quiet pride. Her posture was straighter, her confidence firmer. Every morning she arrived early, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She cleaned every table, greeted every guest with kindness, and carried herself with the same humility that had once been mocked. But now people noticed. "Good evening, Miss Ava," a regular customer greeted her one night, smiling warmly. Ava blushed slightly. "Good evening, sir. Welcome back." Daniel Grant had kept his word. Not only had he reinstated her, he had promoted her. Ava was now the assistant floor manager, trusted with training new staff. It wasn't just a title. It was proof that grace under fire is more powerful than pride under comfort. As for Clara, she returned weeks later, humbled and quieter. When she saw Ava again, she paused, her eyes filled with something unspoken. Regret. Ava smiled softly, stepping closer. "We all make mistakes," she said gently. "What matters is what we learn from them." Clara blinked back tears and nodded. It wasn't forgiveness she expected, but it was exactly what she needed. That night, Daniel hosted a small staff dinner. The restaurant was closed early. Candles flickered across tables, and laughter echoed through the room. When it was Ava's turn to speak, she stood nervously, holding her glass of water. "I used to think," she began, "that people like me, ordinary people, never get noticed, that no matter how hard we work, our kindness doesn't matter. But that night taught me something." She looked around, her voice trembling but strong. "When life tests your dignity, stay silent if you must, but never lower your worth. Because sometimes, even when you think no one is watching, God sends the right person to see your truth." The room fell silent. Even Daniel's eyes glistened, faintly in the candlelight. Later that evening, as Ava stepped outside, she looked up at the night sky. The city lights shimmered, but above them, one star seemed to shine brighter than the rest. For the first time in years, Ava smiled. Not the polite smile she gave customers, but one born of peace. She had been humiliated, broken, and ignored. But now, she had risen. Because dignity, once tested, does not fade. It glows. True power lies not in position or wealth, but in how we treat others when no one is watching.